this is kind of a double story because we have Trump announcing that the military mobilization that he had implemented into Washington, D.C., he's going to be doing it in other cities now. And it looks like the next target is Chicago. At the same time, he's talking about banning the U.S. flag burning. So we're gonna back to back this one, but let's start with the flag burning. This is the announcement that came in the same time that he's talking about mobilizing the military. Interesting timing to come up with this. So let's look at the announcement, and then I want to break this down with you. Here we go.
Sir, this is an executive order on flag burning. It charges your attorney general.
Would you listen to this? This is very important. Flag burning. All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You can do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that.
So it sounds like, and with the reference, if people don't know the reference, he's talking about a 1989 Supreme Court ruling, 5-4, that says burning the U.S. American flag is a freedom of speech. And he's saying, no, we're going to supersede that, override that because of what he says, death. Because he's saying that this is a problem. Americans die. I didn't know that, Jay. I didn't know that a huge cause of death in this country was flag burning. I never saw that statistic. Am I missing something here?
I mean, Matt, clearly there's a direct link between excess deaths and the number of American flags that are burned in any particular area. So this is about Maha right here. We're making the country healthy by taking away freedom of speech. And don't worry, it'll click once you think about it a little bit more. But I mean, I'll be honest with you. When it comes to flag burning, right, 9 times out of 10, whatever reason it is that that person is burning the flag, there's probably a more productive and better way for you to get that message out. However, it's free speech. It's your right if you want to do it. If you want to, burn the flag because you're that upset with the country and you want to put that on display, that's your right. So if you're doing it in a context where you're in front of, the White House and you're telling everyone, let's charge in, let's go take over, that's a different situation. But if you're at a protest, you're not trying to interfere, with any government official processes or any transfers of power, then, what are we talking about? So, it's just showing you how Trump is an authoritarian. He's clamping down on free speech, trying to deploy all these different, military branches across the country. And at the same time, he's escalating with Russia around the world. And, we're hearing rumors that, maybe there's a blackout, coming out soon. So if there's another emergency, is he going to use that to seize even more power? I mean, I don't know if you've been hearing those rumors, but, people are talking about a possible, nationwide power outage. They've been warning about that for years. So I think, we have to look out for a false flag that may be blamed on Russia. But anyway, I think I'm jumping ahead of myself and I'm getting, into additional stories. But I'm just saying, authoritarians capitalize off emergencies, right? They tell you that there's a problem that's happening and I have the solution. And the solution is to give me more power, like locking you up if you burn a flag, which is more power for the federal government. Am I misunderstanding that, Matt? Does that sound like an increase in the power of federal government, which seems to me like the antithesis of what the right is supposed to represent?
Oh, yeah. No, but this is how you trick the right. It's the same trick we saw back after 9/11. It's the freedom isn't free bullshit, which we lived through that one. Freedom isn't free. There was even I remember that's a country song back then. I can't remember who did it. It was remember, freedom isn't free. It cost $1.29 or some crap. And they're saying that you have to give up something in order to get something. And so what is it? What is he promising here? He's promising safety. And this is why, and we'll get into Chicago and the military part too, but it's about safety. And if you can use the fear against half the country because guess what? The other half is they already got fear being used in other ways. So you got to keep both halves.
And
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here's a bonus, Matt. Let's not forget now that Palantir has access to all of our records. Maybe they can stop us and arrest us before we even get to burn the flag, because maybe we order a flag off Amazon and we were critical of the government at one point. So we get a knock on our door asking us, hey, were you thinking about committing a crime? Because we have a hunch that you might be thinking about doing it, and maybe we want to take a few preventative measures, because burning a flag, that's violence. That's violence.
Absolutely.
So
and you hit on a point
there's no telling where this could go, because the government is expanding its power so much, and it's also merging with the private sector to accomplish its goals with the private sector. So that's why some people on the right are unfortunately being tricked into the exact same system they were trying to avoid, because you can accomplish the same goal in both ways. So
no, they're certainly being tricked into this, and it's the fear factor that we're not safe without these extra government crackdowns that are supposed to make us feel like, oh, thank you, Mr. Government, for protecting us. And it's insane, because like you said, like the right historically is against this type of thing if it's coming from big government. That's the point. And they frowned upon, they were angry during COVID. They were angry that Biden continued to push these. By the way, let's remind people, Trump was the one in office when they did the original
Poppy
lockdown.
Warp Speed, father of the vaccine, aka Poppy Warp Speed. Let's not forget
Operation Warp Speed. Let's also not forget shutting down all the small businesses and letting Amazon stay open. That was Trump. But Biden continued this like authoritarian approach to, it's for your own safety, it's for your own good, for the greater good. And if nobody on the left could see it, they were like, oh yeah, this is great. But on the right, they were like, wait a minute, this is a little much. We should be able to have our freedoms, to go outside and do the things we need to do for ourselves. And if you want to get vaxxed up, that's your right. Don't make that something you put on me. So look, I guess over our lifetimes, we've seen both parties kind of go back and forth with when they pick and choose to put principle into play. So maybe the answer is we should stop putting them into these. Oh, wasn't the right supposed to be like this? Wasn't the left? Because they're all over the place depending on.
And you know what I want people to focus on? One of Trump's campaign promises, and one of the reasons why Kennedy joined the Trump campaign, was because Trump said that he was going to protect free speech. He said that, this was one of his priorities. Look at what the Democrats just did during COVID. And he cracks down on free speech just in a different way. So it's just a perfect example that goes to show you, no matter who you have in office, they're all going towards the same end goals, just in different ways. And it's more freedom for corporations, more power for corporations and oligarchs, and less freedom for us. And they're going to keep us safe. The corporations and the oligarchs they know best, and they'll keep us safe. That's what Trump is empowering right now. Yeah,
absolutely. And this transitions to the next part of this, which is more about the same issue. You get half the country living out of the fear that they need to be protected by big government. And like on paper, it's crazy that the right would be so into this, but no, that's what he's saying. It's about safety, but it's really about Palantir. It's really about controlling us. And this is, go ahead.
And one last thing, right? Again, I don't want to sound like I'm all over the place, but if you want to stir up support for a foreign war, one of the first steps of that is a little bit of nationalism, right? Well, before we encourage a three-front war against Russia, China, and Iran, let's get this American spirit going. We're gonna ban burning the American flag, before we go into this stuff. And who knows what happens? Like I said, I think I don't mean to be an alarmist about this, but the timeline that our military is on right now for reproducing the weapons is very short, and our government has immediate, defense goals. Like Trump wants to change it to the Department of War. You caught that, right? Or I don't know. There's so many things happening at once. Like, I don't know if you had a chance to cover that yet, but Trump is now changing it from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. I mean, this is who we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, no, that used to be a talking point we had where we would just call it the Department of War because that's what it is. He's just
It's more
coming out and
honest.
saying it. Yeah,
It's more
pretty
honest,
insane.
but
Yeah,
it's also showing you that he has no intention on using the military for defensive purposes. It's all about using it for offensive purposes.
exactly. So, and then one other reason why you'd want to maybe make it illegal to burn the U.S. flag is because it makes the argument for Israel a little cleaner. Now you can't say that why is it illegal to burn? Not that it's technically illegal, but you can't take a government job. You can't. We already know this. You can't. You have to sign up and sign your name that you will not protest Israel. That includes burning an Israel flag. So now we don't have the talking point anymore of why is it okay to burn a U.S. flag, but it's not okay to burn an Israeli flag, a foreign government flag. Now that's an evened out argument. You say, well, you can't really do either now. So that's another reason to do this.
They're trying to catch up our rights to the rights of Israelis, I guess. But it's still not nearly as close because, if I get insulted, I can't hide behind, like an anti-Semitic label and pull it out of nowhere. I mean, I can't hide behind America. Like if you insult me, I can't hide behind America and say you're anti-Semitic. So there's still a big difference there. But they're trying to catch us up.
There's one talking point off the table that we don't have anymore. We can't say why is it illegal to burn a foreign government flag, but not our own. Oh, I'm sorry. Now we can't do our own either. So that's what I'm saying. It's one talking point off the table now. We don't get it. So that's one thing. So as far as the continuing to get the right, very, very excited about more big government, more military lockdown, the feel good of I'm being protected by Mr. Government.
Nationalism.
Well, nationalism. Exactly. You're 100% right to get ready for a three-front war.
But I would toxic nationalism, not even healthy, productive nationalism.
The
toxic
worst kind.
nationalism.
The worst kind. And I would double down beyond Palantir and Alex Karp telling us three-front war: China, Iran, Russia. I would add Venezuela into the mix. Why not add in a fourth? Why not do four at the same time? We can. It's like, hey, you're juggling three balls. Why not a fourth ball? Throw it.
Well, here's the thing. The Venezuela situation, honestly, could turn into another front against our war, with Russia, because Russia is one of Venezuela's allies. They have already spoken about putting Oreshnik missiles over there, which is something, honestly, everybody should be concerned about. I'm in range of an Oreshnik missile if it's placed in Venezuela. It can hit Texas, and as far as we know, the government can't shoot it down unless they have some secret stuff they haven't rolled out yet that they don't want to send to Ukraine, which is a possibility. But so far, every Oreshnik missile they've shot has not been shot down. So, if they're talking about putting it over there, we're talking about going in there and overthrowing Venezuela. I mean, people need to know. I know Saudi Arabia gets spoken about as like the oil king, but apparently there are more reserves now in Venezuela than there are in Saudi Arabia. So that's a big part of the reason why there's so much interest in it. And Maduro, I haven't looked into everything he's done, so I'm not saying I support him. However, he does seem to have a policy of trying to distribute the profits of the national resources there to the people, which of course, we can't have. We do it in Alaska with our oil, but they're not allowed to do it in Venezuela because they're a developing country and they don't know what's best for them. We know what's best for them.
Yeah. Also, we got to prove that communism or socialism is a failed method, and the way you do that is you destroy it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You cannot give away oil, Jay. Not allowed. Chavez was doing that with Venezuela for years. Oh my God, you giving away oil for free? Not acceptable. Not acceptable. Anyway, that's another topic. Let's stay on this one. And if you guys don't, this is what's happening now. We have Trump threatening not just. We already have the military in DC for 2 weeks. He's bringing it into Chicago, and the next up will be New York and probably LA after that. It's not going to stop there. This is a report from France 24 English giving us the full kind of rundown on what's happening here at this point in the development of the worst kind of nationalism possible, as Jay Scott says. Here we go.
The message from Illinois' elected officials is clear. Keep the military out of Chicago. The state's governor, J.B. Pritzker, gathered with other Democrats, including senators and community leaders, to show their opposition to US President Trump's plans to send the National Guard into the city. Trump wants to crack down on federal crime and called Chicago a mess. Pritzker called it an unconstitutional overreach and called the president a wannabe dictator.
Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab.
He pointed out that Trump was only expanding the military into Democrat-controlled cities. The National Guard were sent to both Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles in recent months. Illinois' governor, himself a Democrat, pointed out that 13 out of the top 20 cities in homicide rates nationwide had Republican governors. In the last year, crime has fallen in nearly every major category tracked by the Chicago Police Department. But Trump doubled down, calling the city a killing field.
A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick.
It's unclear if Donald Trump will go through with his plans, but the state and city officials on Monday pledged to take legal action against the administration to prevent a federal deployment in Chicago.
Now, you see, I got to jump in real quick, right? Because my representative is Chip Roy over here in Texas, right? And as Trump was taking over D.C., he was cheering it on. And I commented on it. And I pointed out the fact that Trump made the announcement earlier that, he is about to essentially interfere with states' rights. And all you guys going along with it are complicit, in this expansion of federal government, right? And the way I worded it was unfortunate because I had responded to a tweet about DC, but I was actually talking about how Trump said earlier that day that he wanted to go into all these Democrat-run cities, which are controlled by the states, because DC is controlled by the federal government. So he made it sound like I had no basic education about the fact that DC is not a state, and he tried to make me look like an idiot on the tweet. And I admit I should have posted the link to the video. However, what we're seeing here is just the expansion of federal government. Is this not supposed to be the exact thing that conservatives are against? Like, I hear some conservatives saying the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights, and states' rights are something that need to be protected. So the current leader of the Republican Party is stripping states' rights and literally going in and taking control of cities, which sets the precedent for the next Democratic president to do that in Republican cities if Republicans start interfering with the policies they want to implement. So just ask yourself, what precedent are we setting right now? And this is not to say that Trump is uniquely bad, because, Biden's pardoning of his son and all of his family members so preemptively and so far back has also set another precedent. So I'm not saying Trump is the worst by any means, but you got to look at who you're dealing with. He's not, if you're conservative, I think it's impossible, honestly, to make the argument that there's any significant long-term difference if you elect Trump versus Kamala. I think long-term, they're both terrible, just in different ways.
Of course they are. And you know what else is very terrible? And I'm not punching down at people. I just think the sentiment is terrible that both camps fell for it. And they're both, the MAGAs are just as guilty right now as the vote blue no matter who's, just as guilty at turning a blind eye to their own inadequacies and horrible stuff, and only focusing on the other side and the horrible stuff they do. And they cannot see beyond that. And even now, if the vote blue, no matter who's, were watching our conversation now, they would be convinced that we are admitting they were right the whole time. No, we're saying this is bad, but guess what? Biden and Harris, same thing for 4 years, and it would have been another 4 years of that too. It's both sides, and we have to stop. We have to call people out, even though they get it right. Like MAGA was right about all the horrible fascist stuff Biden did. The problem is that they looked at it through a magnifying through like this very like no peripheral vision, and they said Biden was uniquely bad. And then you had all the Biden and Harris people saying Trump is uniquely bad. So when they're seeing this go down, you're saying, Jay, you're saying, obviously, I'm not saying that. Well, I know that. Our audience knows that. Most of the country doesn't know that you're obviously saying that. But when we report something bad about Trump, they go, oh, no, he's uniquely Hitler. No, he's following the instruction, the top-down instructions. Palantir was going to get in one way or the other. Who's the best face? Who's the best spokesman for it right now is Trump. He sells it the best. And
I will say, I actually hear more pushback, at least online, from Trump voters who are not like core MAGA. I hear more pushback from people who voted for Trump than I heard before from Biden voters pushing back, on him.
That's true. That's true.
I definitely want to give, the right credit for that. And, I just hope like the left realizes like, hey, the way that MAGA sounds to you is exactly how you sound to me when you talk about Obama. So, like I truly believe this. I keep saying it. Trump is the Obama of the right. He's going to have his defenders the same way Obama has his defenders. And I think 10 years from now, they're going to sound indistinguishable. Exactly alike.
I think you were the first one to make that analogy, Jay. And the more I think about it, it's 100% right. 100% right. This is the Obama of the right. The Obama of the right is Trump. Perfectly well versed and suited for TV. For the suave, it's like what Netflix deal is Trump gonna get when he's done, right? Is he gonna get the same package deal Obama got, the Netflix deal? I mean, seriously, it's all theater, and who's the best person to sell it to the other half of the country that didn't buy it the last time? They're on board now.
Quote I heard that I'll never forget, and I don't think this is all Trump voters, so don't take this as me saying this is all Trump voters, but like Trump represents what some poor people think rich people are. Like but they don't realize that he is a joke to most of the billionaire and millionaire class because he's a bad businessman. He just, he's just good at marketing, and he happened to have a silver spoon in his mouth. So he knows how to read a crowd. He's good at marketing. He may, be good at making some strategic moves here and there. But if you just listen to the way he talks, like I still get ashamed that this man, was president. Like he has a fourth grade vocabulary. A fourth grade vocabulary. We can do better, man. It's not about, being overly fancy, and throwing a bunch of jargon at people all the time. But like, he's the way he describes himself, you can predict what he's going to say. If he's ever has a problem with someone, all he does is he takes whatever they're known for and says they're terrible at it. Like, if it's an actor he's criticizing, Robert De Niro, terrible, makes the worst movies, nobody likes him, he's a bum, that just got in because he got family connections in Hollywood. Like he's not a smart guy, like as much as he thinks he might be strategic sometimes, but he's just not a smart guy. We can do better, America.
Well, I think George W. Bush is like, oh man, I should have taken some lessons from this guy, because I was just the guy they wanted to have a beer with. This guy goes in for the kill. He goes in for the I was the guy who just wanted to, watch this drive, hey, watch this drive.
He's entertaining to watch. He's entertaining to watch for sure, but I don't want him as president. Sorry, Megan.
Okay. So with that, you mentioned Jay, and I think this is important. This is J.D. Vance at the same press meeting announcing more military, justifying why it was so good to have it in D.C. for 2 weeks. Watch him try and tell us numbers, which I actually think are accurate numbers. It's just, to me, well, you guys see the clip for yourself. This might be the giveaway you were talking about, Jay, about some of the maggots going, wait a minute, what are we doing, and what are you bragging about? So hear it directly from J.D. Vance's mouth. Here we go.
I want to echo something the president said, where you say there haven't been murders in a couple of weeks in D.C., and it doesn't sound good, but then you talk to local law enforcement, and I didn't realize that this town averaged one murder every other day for the last 20, 30 years, which means that in 2 short weeks, the president and the team have saved 6 or 7 lives, people who would have been killed on the streets of DC, who are now living, breathing, spending time with their families because the president had the willpower to say no more. We're not going to give the streets of DC over to vagrants and robbers and murderers. And the last point I want to make, sir, to your point about we want people to welcome us, to ask us, because look at Governor Pritzker in Illinois, or Governor Newsom in Los Angeles, or Governor Moore in Maryland. They are angrier about the fact that the President of the United States is offering to help them get their crime under control than they are about the fact that murderers are running roughshod over their cities and have been for decades. Why are Democrat governors angrier about federal law enforcement helping clean up their streets than they are about the fact that those streets need to be cleaned up to begin with? It shows a real sickness in the head. And I agree with the President of the United States. I think most Democrats, rank and file, nobody likes crime. Republicans don't like crime. Democrats don't like crime. Independents don't like crime. Why are Democratic governors doing everything in their power to make crime easier to do in their cities? It doesn't make an ounce of sense to me. But, Mr. President, I appreciate you being willing to help. And I hope these governors take you up on the offer, because we should clean up all of America's streets. It's the right of every American to live in safety and comfort in their community.
So his selling point is 6 or 7 people, based on the statistics, are alive that wouldn't have been alive. Is that because he made 6 or 7 arrests in 2 weeks? What was the cost of this? Locking down DC. And when I say locking down, I'm not saying like COVID lockdown, but I am saying, and we know for people there, we know that, Jamie, who does our tech on our show, we were talking on yesterday on Truthwire, and he's in DC, and he's saying these businesses can't function. They don't have customers. Nobody's in this. They're scared to death to go outside. So it kind of reminds me of what we're dealing with here in LA with ICE. There's a sentiment in the air that's effing scary. So you're talking about, so your justification, your selling point to other governors, JD Vance's selling point is, we just saved 6 lives. Never mind the 20 people we just paid Israel to murder on live TV. Let's forget about those 20 people. But we just saved 6 lives by scaring the crap out of everybody in DC. Would you like us to scare the crap out of everyone in your cities too and shut down those small businesses? Would you like that? That's what it sounds like is what he's trying to sell.
Yeah, and it's funny because even Putin, the other day just called JD Vance the next president, of the United States, because he realizes that JD Vance is being set up to move into this position. And let's not forget who funded JD Vance's whole career. Oh yeah, Palantir. And who's going to benefit from all this, increased surveillance? Oh yeah, Palantir. But on the point of, how it's essentially just, expanding the reach of the federal government. It's just amazing to me that Republicans are that short-sighted that they can't see that setting this precedent just makes it easier to justify once a Democrat, is in office. And if you really want to address the crime levels, which are actually lower in many of the cities and states that he's talking about going into than they have been in previous years, they're actually trending down overall. If you want to address crime, then why not get to the reasons that people are committing crime? And, there's a saying I'll never forget: you build prisons. If you spend your money building prisons, you're going to get prisoners. If you spend your money building schools and educating people, you're going to get scholars. So I know it's a multifaceted, conversation. There are many issues that play into, the problems we have in the country. And I think talking about cultural issues, structural issues, all these things are definitely fair game. However, if we're not investing in education, if we're not investing in rehabilitating people who are committing crimes, then how are we ever going to stop the problem? And there's a clear correlation between recidivism rates and the amount of emphasis that a country puts on rehabilitation while people are in jail. So I'm not arguing for the government to be soft on crime. What I'm arguing is that while we have the prisoners in jail, we should understand why they're there and at least make a reasonable attempt to make sure that they don't wind up being back there. And really quick, then we can, then I'll throw it back to you. In Norway and in Sweden and in Scandinavia, when someone gets arrested, they do a mental evaluation of this person. They sit them down with the psychologist and they figure out, like, why is it this person committed the crime? Is it mental instability? They need a psychologist to speak to? They need some medical, intervention? Or is this an economic reason? Do they not have, like a way to earn money? Well, do they know that you can become a plumber? Do they know that you can pick up a trade? And they train people while they're in jail to prepare them to go into, trades or whatever reason it was they're in there. They try to address it while they're in jail. So they make use of the time. In America, the focus is punishment. You did the crime, you got to be punished. That's it. And then, of course, you may have a few nonprofits that try to intervene and try to, help people every now and then, but it's not the same structural like assessment and process that people go through in other places. So if we want to address crime, why not talk about the reasons crime is happening and just stop throwing endlessly more money at enforcement? Sorry, and one last thing. And of course, you have cities and states that are making it illegal to sleep in public. So you're increasing homelessness. So, you're criminalizing homelessness. So we have more military, we have a bigger police state, we have homeless people being criminalized, we have rents going up and the cost of living being unsustainable, and you have free prison labor. So, put that whole picture together. It's not pretty.
Jay, I appreciate you breaking down all the things that we're not doing to get to the essence of crime, and it really just highlights how off that last clip of JD Vance was. And I know I mentioned that what a horrible selling point this is, that you're talking about 6 or 7 deaths you're preventing. I want to be clear, if anybody who took that as in I'm not being sensitive to the 6 or 7 people, I want to remind people that the championing of deaths that were lowered during COVID. Guess which one? Do you guys remember when they said the car accident death rate went down? Really? That's funny. Maybe it was because nobody was on the effing road. Guess what else went down? Flu deaths. So it's like, so those were reasons they used to say this is working. Do you guys see?
And fun fact,
you can take statistics and use them as ammo to shut down somebody that is questioning your policy.
Exactly.
Oh, what are you questioning? The 6 or 7 people we just saved? You're questioning that? They did that shit with us with COVID. They said, oh, look, no one's dying from car accidents. Yeah, because no one's allowed to drive. So I'm just letting you guys know that's the tactic. Oh, what you want grandma to die? You don't care about grandma? No, we think that your policy is going to have more harm than good. And we're showing you guys why. Every reason you just laid out, Jay, is a better way to attack the problem, but they're not going to attack it that way.
Yeah. And, just to kind of add, to that point, 40% of Black businesses were permanently closed during COVID, right? Because of the policies that we implemented. So, and that was both Trump and the Democrats, although the Democrats probably pushed like harsher policies within their states. However, the net impact was that if you look at, Black owned businesses nationwide, over 40% of them were closed. So at what cost, in DC, why don't we take a look at the impact that this policy had on GDP and on small and medium-sized businesses in DC, a couple months from now? Did businesses close down and lose a bunch of money because of these policies? And how much did it impact business? So all fair points, man.
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear, the pushback from Chicago leaders, to me, it reminds me of the theater we had from Gavin Newsom saying, how dare you bring ICE in? I'm going to challenge you to a duel. Where there's a legitimate point there underneath it, but it is theater. It's playing the role and pretending that Chicago's always been on the right side of standing up against tyranny. No, you've also contributed to tyranny. And as we called out Gavin Newsom here in California, it's the same thing. Oh, you pick and choose when you're going to be the good guy. Here's an example of the mayor, Brandon Johnson, pretending to be the good guy, or pretending to always be the good guy. Even if he has a point on this one, he's gonna pretend he's always been on the right side for the people.
Exactly.
Here we go.
And has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to arrest 9 people in DC. Clearly he's demonstrated that he doesn't have a level of consciousness to understand what it takes to run cities, not to mention an entire country. And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people in this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny. And if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city. The city of Chicago, one of the most diverse economies in the world, right? Again, a city that has been, founded and established on the values of working people. We're not going to surrender our humanity to this tyrant. I can tell you this, the city of Chicago has a long history of standing up against tyranny.
No, you don't, but okay. Okay. Yeah, that's all. I want to play it because it's the next part of it's the next act in the show, right? It reminds me of Newsom taking on Trump too, which happened here.
Just seeing him talk, it just reminds me, Republicans always point out how, a lot of, crime is bad in a lot of, Democrat run cities. And it's true. And, even when Democrats have controlled places for decades and decades, they just never make the systemic changes that are necessary. So Republicans are right when they say Democrats haven't fixed the problems of the communities they claim to represent, but Republicans don't have an answer for that either. But, he should definitely acknowledge that there is a problem of violence in Chicago. I'm pretty sure it has the highest violence rate of a major city that high in the country. So, and people need to just start talking about the reasons why. And I always like starting here. America is one of the few developed countries where the property taxes are what funds the schools. And if you have a situation where property prices have been depressed because of, say, redlining or other economic policies, then you're going to have worse schools in specific areas. And for Democrats all across the country to never bring up that issue, yet claim to care about the Black American community is just insane to me personally. And what they try to do is they do little fixes and maybe they throw a little money at it, but they don't account for how the money is spent. Like I've seen studies, man, like when they try to give money to poorer neighborhoods, school systems over there, the school systems go spend it on football and basketball. And then conservatives use those examples. And they're like, look, see, we tried to pump money into this education system and the kids never did any better. Like, let's talk about what are the reasons behind the crime rate in the country. It can be a wide-ranging conversation. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but we got to talk about the structural factors that everybody is avoiding.
Yeah. Before we move on off this story, there's one more part I wanted to ask you about, Jay, because we saw a bunch of these. I was on with Fiorella and Pasta on Truthwire yesterday, and we're talking about there's a African-American voice, and we know this voice very well, the one that got sick and tired of Obama, didn't vote for Hillary, not because they were sexist and misogynist, because they understood that they were abandoned by this party. And then we saw them move away from the party and into the MAGA camp. I'm going to play this clip. This is one of many. This isn't just one. I'm not cherry picking. I'm telling you guys, there's a lot of these voices out there telling us that Trump's doing the right thing right now, and the Democrats are pieces of crap for not acknowledging it. And I want your take on this. Again, one of many that are circling on Twitter and on what's the other? It's all over the place. But we just grabbed one of them here. Here we go.
Donald Trump proved that it's possible to end black-on-black crime. He proved that, right? In D.C., his troops, no murders for the entire weekend. That is insane. And to think that the left would protest against that, to think that the left would say, oh my God, it is a bad thing that black people are now stop killing each other. And the reason why that is a bad thing for them is because that is a core of liberalism, right? That is part of what makes them victims. So if you take away each sort of victim mentality peg or pillar, that's one less person that's going to have a victim mentality. So that's one less person that'll be a leftist. that'll be a woke libtard, right? So they are freaking out. But fuck them. What's crazy is the fact that he could actually fix that. And with police, who would have thought? That's why I always say every hood should have one prison in it.
Oh my God. I mean, so this is why can't both be true? Why can't this guy just understand? The Democrats could have purposely failed you, and the MAGA movement can also purposely trick you into doing the same thing. Can he not see that? Please help me with this, Jay. What's going on here?
Listen, I'm not making any accusations. I just like to point out in general that it's very profitable if you happen to be, a person of color to want to work with the Republican Party because they've had trouble, getting inroads, in minority communities in the country, right? So, but anyway, to get to address the content of what he said. I mean, to think that the way to solve a problem is to focus on the symptom of the problem, it just seems like so illogical, like to me personally, that I can't understand how this guy, it claims to be conservative, but he thinks the solution to the crime rate is big government. Because that's exactly what he's saying. Like, you claim to be conservative, and the way you want to solve the crime rate is big government. And you could argue for big government in schools. Let's put a bunch of government money into schools. Or you could argue for big government through the police force, and let's just put a bunch of money, into the police force. And I'm not someone who thinks that abolishing the police is a good idea. I don't think, defund the police was a wisely framed campaign or anything like that, because we need police. So I'm not saying that we have to get rid of all police. However, like, their assessment of the problems, it seems to either lack knowledge of American history or purposely avoid addressing the root causes of these issues. And it's not just about industry, and conservatives like to point out, it's all a cultural thing. And I will say, to an extent, I definitely agree there are cultural factors. And side note, I just want to give everyone a little example, right? I grew up in Turks and Caicos, which was a country that had about I want to say 15,000 people in it, right? Up until the early 2000s. It was over 90% Black. And while I was there, I think there were 2 murders over the entire time I was there, right? So it has a very low murder rate. And then it actually became more diverse. There was more economic development, but the culture changed a lot. A lot of new people came in, and the percentage of that it was Black actually went down, and the crime rate is now one of the highest in the Caribbean. So I do definitely agree that culture plays a role. But even if you want to talk about Black culture in America, well, let's start by talking about what influences culture. Music, media. Who owns these companies? Oh, the same people who own private prisons? Well, maybe we can talk about that. If you want to talk about culture, let's talk about how the culture is being influenced. So I agree. Let's have the conversation, but let's talk about the root causes of it and not just focus on expanding the power of big government in the worst possible way. That's just my opinion. But I just want everyone to know it's very profitable if you happen to be a person of color to just run to the Republican Party. And it's easy right now because people realize that Democrats are a waste of time. So they're going to look to try something else. So now there's never been a better time for opportunists to seize on that financial opportunity.
Well, no, so, I see that. And I would say back in November, October, September last year, a year ago, it makes complete sense to bail on the Democrats, go over to the MAGA side, and give Trump a chance. I'm just saying however many months later we are now, we're almost getting to the year of the actual election. Wouldn't it be the time to say, you know what? Trump's also tricking his people the same way we were tricked. But I want to see more of that from the minority communities. I want to see more of that, because when you have a chance to see both, when you've lived however many years on one side and then you switch to the other, how long do you need before you see the same red flags? How long does it take? Maybe we're not giving enough time. Hey, we needed a long time with Obama, right? We needed it. We couldn't, I guess I have to say, I couldn't see it in the first year. But maybe we give them a little more time. But at some point, we have to say both parties have failed us. Both parties use the same tactics. They both use fear against us, and they make us hate the other side. So stop. Just don't go from one side to the other and then not have any critique on what you're experiencing again. That's all. I just want to throw that part out.
Yeah. And real quick, this isn't to say that there aren't Black influencers who say the right thing. There are plenty of, Black influencers that realize the duopoly is a waste of time, but the people who get pushed in front of us, unfortunately, about 80% of them or 70% of them are Democrat. Another 25%, are now switching to Republican, and maybe 5%, are calling it out. But you that's the same across every community, because right now, the majority of the country, unfortunately, even though they describe themselves as independent, most people get tricked into voting of the lesser of two evils. So yeah, you're seeing the same thing, across every community in that respect.
Okay, let me take a moment to introduce you to our good friends over at World Harvest Food Bank right here in LA. World Harvest has been serving families across Los Angeles for 18 years now. And they started with this simple idea: everyone deserves access to healthy, affordable food, no matter what they're going through. With their Cart with a Heart program, families can walk away with a full cart of groceries, fresh produce, dairy, meat, and pantry supplies for just a $50 contribution. That's for the entire cart. That same cart will cost over $300 at a typical grocery store. At World Harvest, everyone is welcome. They don't ask for income verification, ID, or any paperwork. No. Basically, their doors are open to anyone who's doing their best, but just needs a little extra push to get by. If you're an Angelino like me, the times have been tough here. First with all the union strikes, the LA fires, and now the ICE raids going on. It seems like we're living in a constant state of uncertainty. And that's why it's so important to support local charities like World Harvest, because they aren't just helping the community. They're an essential function in its very survival. World Harvest is located at Venice and Arlington. And right now, you can use our special discount code THL20 for 20% off your contribution amount at checkout. And if you're not in the LA area, you can still help out with a $50 donation, which will provide a full cart of food for a family by going to worldharvestfoodbank.org or scan the QR code for more info. Or you can just spread the word. Follow them online. Let people know they're here for them, because at the end of the day, it's about providing choice, access, and relief without barriers. World Harvest Food Bank. End hunger now.